Hey guys, what's going on? It's Broken Nose Gaming here, and as you can tell by the screen, I did get accepted into the World of Tanks Blitz Ultra Test for the Reforged update, and now that I've spent some time with it, I figured I'd make a video. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the update so far, or the Ultra Test, I really haven't played that many games. As a matter of fact, the first day that the servers opened up, I spent about 2 to 3 hours just kind of navigating the user interface and seeing what I thought about what the layout looks like. Now, before we go any further, this is a ultra test or beta test or whatever you want to call it. So these obviously are not going to be like the final looks. So there are some things that I probably will gloss over because they're not ready yet. Speaking of, like, if we take a look at the hangar here, the hangar is a lot bigger. It's also a lot stranger. This is kind of different. It's kind of all over the place now. You're outside. Your commander, which we will go over in a little bit, standing next to your tank. It looks like they might be putting some stuff up on the screen. Your music system that you had in the old garage is still here. The audio for the music doesn't work right now. As a matter of fact, the audio is probably one thing I will touch on. I know it's not finalized, but it just feels a little janky. I'm hoping that they'll work on that later on. Right now, I'm sure they're working on like things like physics and gameplay and real core mechanics, so that's what we'll be talking about. And if you look down here, you will notice that your little list of tanks, everything's a little bit different. You do it by sets, you can do it by tiers, or you can do it by... Oh, I broke it. There's a bug. Or you can do it by newest. So let's click on this. Let's go. This is interesting. So this shows us all the tanks that we have by tier. So as you can see, a lot of the old tanks that don't have a home, which is basically like tier 3 and below, are now considered V, not to be considered with tier 5, because they'll actually, if you scroll over, you'll see they will use regular numbers now. So the V tier, or the vintage tier, is going to be tier 3 and below, and essentially I guess they'll just be in a different matchmaker system or something like that. So they've changed the tiering numbers, and if we look here, we'll start at the highest tier. Tier 10 is now considered tier 7, and tier 9 is now tier 6, tier 8 is tier 5, so on and so forth, to all the way, tier 4, which is considered tier 1. Interesting. So I haven't really looked at the tier set this way. I have actually been... Oh, there we go. I guess I just have to click it in a certain spot. Okay. So that is another thing I'll bring up when it comes to the user interface, is when it comes to how we do this compared to how we used to do this, things are a little different. So there's a lot of different sets here. So this is how it's going to default. It's going to be these different sets. The sets are basically like, instead of the tech tree, and we'll go to it real quick, let's go to our sets. If you go to here, we can show you all the collections. So here's all the collections. There's a lot. Actually, there's actually even more than that. I only have 49 out of 80 collections. It's kind of cool that you can either search everything up and it will show you everything here. Yeah, here you go. So these are all your like collections and stuff like that. Like I said, like everything's not finished yet, so things are still kind of weird. But you'll notice like there's some differences. So like, for example, the Hell Hornets. Obviously I have that set unlocked. The Armored Antiques require these red keys to unlock in order to essentially move your progress up in that collection. So there's a lot of different collections. I will say the one thing that they have taken the time on, and I think is kind of cool, is if you click on any of these, there are soundtracks for the collections. Let me just throw a couple at you that are just kind of out there. And are kind of... it just makes me chuckle a little bit. But it's cool that every one of these collections has audio, so we'll click on the brass. Let me back out. So as you can see, there's all these different tanks in that collection. So there are some other cool ones. There's some that don't have like logos or things yet. Like you have this one where it's just a gear. This actually is the last season's tanks, but there's an extra one in there called the Prowler. Another thing that's interesting to me is you can actually see the names right now, because not all the names are set up. This thing originally was going to be called something else other than the Quetzal or whatever that it's called now. Anyways, let me go back. I will just throw one more. I thought this one was hilarious. Actually, before I show you that one, certain ones. So the Girls in Panzer has its own collection. Kind of cool that it has its own music, but the one I'm looking for is actually the Insurgent Machines. Now, if you remember, we did a Terminator collaboration at one point in World of Tanks Blitz. This is where they're at, but the soundtrack just makes me chuckle so much. So the thing that's crazy about that is it's clearly Terminator inspired, and obviously they're not going to play the legit Terminator soundtrack because it's going to cost money. So it's just different enough to where it's not Terminator, but it's Terminator. Also, another interesting thing is if you looked at that when I clicked on the other Terminator tank, which was kind of like the off-brand Terminator Battle Pass before they got the official one, that thing was called an M18E2. So like Wargaming just kind of came up with these extra names for their tanks. So even though that was a medium tank, apparently it was built on the idea of the M18 Hellcat, which is kind of interesting. So like, yeah, but all of these have these different soundtracks when you look through it. And, you know, that's a nice touch, but I feel like collections as of right now are a little bit more difficult to navigate than the tech tree was. There's just so many of them. It's just so much stuff to peel through. And I did spend a decent amount of time just kind of like looking at all this because there's a lot. And not all of the sets are showing up in my tech tree down here either, which is kind of another weird issue. If you click here, for example, you can filter stuff down even further and only have it set up the tanks by nation still, which does get you some interesting setups, and will show you everything that you should have. But it's just, I don't know. Collections as an aesthetic choice looks okay. Collections as a functional choice seem a little convoluted, and I feel like needs more refinement than what we see right now. You can still do things like favorite tanks, and when you favorite tanks, it'll show up at the very front of the list, no matter how you have it set up via collections or what have you. So there is some stuff that kind of comes back from World of Tanks Blitz, but this just feels like there's a lot going on for what it is, and I don't think it's thought all the way through yet. And maybe it's because we are in, you know, the first pass of the test. Maybe they will refine it, maybe they'll make it better. And that's another thing, there are going to be multiple tests, because if you look, for example, the CS53 is ready to play, but if you click on the Object 590, it says the content is in development, wait for next updates. So there are going to be more releases of the test than what we see right now. So as we go on about the UI, actually we'll take a look at that up here right now. So we have the shop, which is kind of the same. We have notifications, which is pretty much the same. We have clans, which are pretty much the same. We have the home, which is going to be your hangar. Your missions tab, which used to be on the left-hand side, is now up here. It will show you your daily missions, it will show you your battle pass missions, and it will show your clan missions. It's kind of cool that we have the missions tab up at the top now. If you click here, this will bring you to your tank browser where you can look for stuff. There are other ways to search up your tanks. If we take a look here, you can do it by category, and then it'll also show you what's popular, what's similar, best damage, similar to another. So it'll show you all these different ways that you can look up your particular sets. It will also show you your sets that you have used last on over here. And last but not least, on our top menu here, we have this button, which is the Commanders button. Now, Commanders are replacing the crew skills in Blitz. So right now in Blitz, you have that little menu, and you have those crew skills that essentially you can grind. When you play a certain tank class, you grind whatever skill set you're working on. Most of us probably who have been playing for a long time have them maxed out. I personally have them maxed out. And all the crew skills that you have work on every tank. Well, now it's a little bit different. So now you're going to have a variety of commanders. This is our stock that is currently in the test. And currently, as you can see, 2 of them are grayed out, but we'll go over this. So essentially now you can only have 1 commander assigned to a tank. So your tank's not going to have that big laundry list of skills all activated at once. Your commander will have 2 particular skills that will level up as you grind them active on that tank. This also breaks down even further. Certain commanders are only good for certain classes of tanks. Now, the jack of all trades here, Duncan Anderson, is good for any tank class. So if for some reason you don't like the commander that you have for whatever class, or you don't have a commander for a certain class, for example, light tanks, I don't have a light tank commander unlocked right now, I can use Duncan Anderson. We also have a heavy tank commander, Olivia Vasquez, a medium tank commander, Anthony Cole, a heavy tank commander, Kai Manu, a tank destroyer commander, Lisa Diaby. The other 2 that we have that are not available, at least to me currently, is Ducky, which is for light tanks, and we have Captain for medium tanks. Now, Captain is, as far as I know, is the guy from the Mad Games little videos and stuff that they did. So it's kind of cool that we have a real-life guy from Blitz in here. But those are your commanders. Now, scrolling back, we can look at these really quick. So, for example, Duncan has the max damage 3rd shot mechanic that you can level up, and as you level it up, it'll basically do anywhere from 4% to 12% more damage, so they've toned that back a lot. He also has rapid fire, which basically is a flat bonus, anywhere from 2 to 6% faster automatically on your tank. We can move to Olivia. Olivia's for a heavy tank. She has the Iron Will perk, which can increase the tank's HP anywhere from 3% to 10%, depending on her level, as well as a shared buff for your allies called Guerrilla Tactics, where any tanks within a 50-meter radius of you can have their accuracy and movement increased by anywhere from 2 to 7%. Up next is a commander specifically for medium tanks. That is Anthony Cole and his little doggo. And he has 2 mechanics as well. can increase your reload speed anywhere from 4 to 12% for 5 seconds after you basically track an enemy tank. And he can also increase your tank's movement speed by 3 to 10%. These are pretty cool mechanics. The mobility mechanic is pretty nice. It's interesting that they're introducing new mechanics that they hadn't had in the game before. So, like, the 1-2 punch thing is definitely not something we'd ever seen. The tank movement mechanic is been around, sort of, but not in this capacity. So it's interesting and kind of refreshing that we're seeing these different sort of mechanics being brought out into the game. Also, he's the only one that has a dog, which is kind of cool. Anyways, moving on to our next one, we have Camo. Camo is for a heavy tank as well. Camo is more about your armor thickness, so this guy would work great on like the Mouse, the VK100 series, things like that, things that have thick armor, because it will increase your armor from anywhere from 1.5 to 5%. And if you block a shot with your tank, the next shot that you fire can deal anywhere from 3 to 10% extra damage. I used all of these commanders in a match, each one. I will not show the replays for each one, only because they do not all have voice acting right now, and I will get to that in just a second. Finally, there is our one tank destroyer commander, Lisa Diaby. So for her, she kind of has a similar mechanic to Duncan, except for if you fire 2 damaging shots, the next one will have an improved accuracy up to 75%, and then she also is the one that will increase the concealment anywhere from 9 to 30%. So the thing that bums me out about this is now the camouflage skill that you had in current Blitz is no longer going to be blanket applied to every tank. Now only the tank destroyer class is going to get a really big buff when it comes to the camo. I'm not super excited about that. That kind of sucks that you're taking that away, because tanks like the Barask were really fun because it had such high camo, being a small medium tank. We're not going to see that anymore. And then finally, the other two that we can't access, or at least I can't access right now, is Ducky. Ducky has a sort of new mechanic when it comes to the quick spot over here. Essentially, you will automatically have the light bulb go off in 1 second instead of 3 seconds. So that's kind of like, there's, I believe, either Uprising or Mad Games has a mechanic similar to that. And then also, you can have a consumable perk where if you use a consumable, your rate of fire and movement gets increased anywhere from 1 to 5% for anywhere between 5 and 15 seconds after using a consumable. That's pretty cool. I've heard talk that Ducky is a little bit underpowered compared to the other commanders. And then finally, we have the Captain. The Captain is for medium tanks. So the Captain has the run and gun perk, which increases accuracy while the tank's in motion, which is very similar to the firing on the move and rotational buffs that you'd had with the medium tank crew skill. And then Encore, essentially, you get movement speed increases as you lose more HP, which that's kind of interesting. That's, again, kind of a new mechanic. So basically, the more damage you take, the quicker you get, the hopefully faster you can get away and not lose all your HP, which is kind of interesting. Again, we can't really try that out because, again, I cannot get the Captain. He is grayed out and not usable right now. Now, as I mentioned earlier, each one of these commanders do have unique voice acting. Right now, the only commanders that have voice acting are Duncan Anderson, Olivia Vasquez, and Anthony Cole. So they are a little different. There's no radio filtering over them right now. It's just the straight voice. I don't know if that's going to stay that way. I did kind of like I'm not going to lie, I did kind of like our old voiceovers. As a matter of fact, later on into Blitz, I even started using mods that would use the World of Tanks PC voice acting for some of the nations. For example, the US, I actually used the original US voice acting from the World of Tanks PC in Blitz. We're not going to have that anymore. We're now going to have just commanders, no matter what nation it is, speaking. When it comes to the voice acting of these new characters,
take that, you tossers! Target's on fire! We hit the bastard's module!
Roll out, soldier. The enemy has no idea what's coming. Enemy module damaged.
Let's turn the enemy into scraps. Vamos! I love a shot with extra bite.
I'm on the fence about it. Anthony's obviously the most military-like and sounds very similar to, like, you know, what we have in Blitz right now. Duncan threw me off because he's Scottish. I didn't think Duncan was going to be Scottish. And Olivia's voice acting, I don't know. It feels really out of place. I don't know if they can fix it or not, or if these are all done deals. The voice acting's kind of a mixed bag. And then finally, I will talk about the one thing that we saw in the video that I said kind of reminded me of Fortnite. And that is obviously our aesthetics and visuals when it comes to our commanders. Duncan, I don't know if it's the hairstyle or what, but he definitely kind of has a Fortnite vibe going on. Olivia very much has a Fortnite vibe going on, especially with the wild, crazy hair color and stuff like that. She's really out there. The happy face patch on the side, she's got spray paint. Also, they're going to have lore. There's going to be lore in World of Tanks Blitz. There's going to be backstories. Now, right now, there is none, obviously. It just says locked. It's not ready or done. But there's going to be lore and backstory for each one of the commanders in Blitz. If we look at Anthony, Anthony's, again, probably the most traditional. Reminds me most of what we used to have in World of Tanks Blitz. Very military-oriented. Has military gear. Has a little doggo that also has a little vest on him, which is kind of cool. Kai here, I don't know his vibe. He kind of reminds me of Maui from Moana. I don't know. I'm sure we'll get more of a backstory on him. And Lisa also is another character that looks more familiar to us. It's more military vibe. Just, we don't have voice acting for her, so I don't know how she's going to sound right now. And then our last two, Ducky is, I don't know, Ducky is another real Fortnite-looking character to me. Like, she's got her little drone, she's got her little tech visor. I don't know. I do not know how Ducky's going to sound. I don't know. Ducky's kind of out there. And then the captain is a very faithful recreation of our gentleman who portrays him in, like, the Mad Games video shorts that they recently did for, like, the Tier 7 rammer and stuff like that. I don't think he looks that bad. He looks a little shiny. I think that's the only issue I have is, like, his skin is shiny, and I don't know if that's just the Unreal Engine or what, but when it comes to aesthetics, like, I like Anthony, I like Lisa, I like Captain, I don't mind Duncan. I can go either way with Kai. I'm not a huge fan of Olivia, and I'm not a huge fan of Ducky either. That's probably how I would rate those commanders. So I kind of gone over everything I wanted to with the commanders. There is one more button, that is your player button. It shows you how many battles have been played, your player level. Apparently, as you level up, you will get these set keys to unlock new sets as you go. There's some other stuff. Battle history. Training rooms is going to be over here. Your personal profile. Storage, settings, chats, and log out. So if we hit the settings button, we will actually take a look and see what we have settings-wise. Since we're using this new Unreal Engine 5, there are more options. One thing I did appreciate is my monitor has a 200 Hz refresh rate. I can play up to 200 Hz now. 200 frames per second, essentially. You can do UI scaling, so you can scale it up and down. I take that back. You can scale it up. You cannot scale it down. So after graphics, we can go to the game options. Now, in these settings, these are all kind of similar to what we had before, but there is a new one here, armor highlight. So there are three options. Classic is what we're used to. Red means don't shoot. There is default. So the new, and this will be important for the players that have been around, default red means shoot the red. Personally, I wouldn't use that as a longtime player, that's really confusing. And then there's Combined. Combined is interesting because it will say, don't shoot me in red, shoot me in green. I would either be using Classic or Combined. I definitely would not be using Default. I feel like Default is confusing because of how long I've been playing the game. Sound-wise, it's very basic. Right now, there's main volume, music, sound effects, and voiceover volume. That's it. The controls, I'm going to tell you right now, I've already had to tone down my mouse sensitivity. At 100% right now, the game feels very twitchy, and that is one of my biggest complaints about the game right now. At 100%, my mouse is super twitchy. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it's just because it needs more work on when it comes to that or what, but I'm not a huge fan. The list of players right now is also the only way you can see the ally and enemy tank names while they're on the field. I'll show you in a replay video, but essentially the tanks just have numbers on top of them. They do not have the player names. Other options have nothing. So that's kind of just a quick and dirty rundown when it comes to like the UI, how it's handling, how it's looking. Like I said, not everything's done yet. The audio definitely seems very disjointed. Even in a match, the audio seems pretty disjointed. Here's another bug. If you exit out of certain menus, I used to be able to move my tank around. I now cannot. So there are definitely some UI bug issues. The mouse wheel scroll works. In order to drag, you have to right click. So it's pretty quick and smooth, but there is a lot of dragging. The mouse scroll takes a very long time just because of how the tank arrangement is set up right now. I really do wish they would go back to like the double tier carousel option. That would be a lot nicer. I know we had that in World of Tanks PC. If these are how big our tank icons are going to be, I would much rather see like a double stack or something, or make the tank icons smaller. I feel like these are too big right now, in my opinion. So I guess we can look at the shop really quick, just because there are some new currency pieces in here. So there are the keys, which you can buy for gold. There's also steel. Now, steel is a new currency, and I'm not a huge fan of this, but if we go to tank, and let's go to upgrades, let's go to consumables. So right now, you have your basic consumables. These consumables are free. They will not cost any money to replenish, but that is pretty much the same in Blitz right now as well. Then you have these two other tiers. Now, these other tiers used to be replenishable for credits. They now are replenished by this new mechanic currency called steel. I currently have 97,000 steel. You can apparently buy steel in the store. I am going to keep an eye on this and see if steel also is something you earn in any other fashion, or if it is only something you can buy in the store. But this feels like an extra step, in my opinion, because you can buy steel for credits. So unless steel's going to play a role in something else, I feel like this is just an extra step, and it seems kind of, I don't know, I'm not a fan of it. But let's go back and we'll take a look at the other things that we have when it comes to changes. Enrichment. Enrichment is now a lot more streamlined, and there are different tiers of enrichment. You can enrich basically, I think, any tank. I haven't checked yet, but certain tanks will already be fully enriched. So if we looked at, like, say, the Type 62, it is enriched as high as it can go. It's automatic. Collector tanks, I believe, are also going to have enrichment, and they will have different levels. I believe you can enrich them further if you wanted to, but it's going to be all for gold, so gold's going to become an even more utilized currency. Going to assume people are going to be spending more gold. Another thing to look at after the consumables and the enrichment is the shells. Now, before, you used to have essentially a set number of shells for every tank, right? So like you'd have like, let's say for example, 50 shells, right? So you could do like 30 armor piercing, 15 premium APCR, and 5 high explosive. Well, look at it now. Now, our AP and our HE rounds are unlimited, so you can have as many... you will not run out of ammo. You will not run out of AP. You will not run out of HE. There is a limited amount of premium ammo that you can carry in your tank. For example, for the Type 64, you can only carry up to 20 shells. This is an interesting approach because we're kind of leaving the world of realism, even though there wasn't a whole lot because Blitz is obviously an arcade tank game. But now you don't have to worry about running out of ammo. The implications for this are more in the special game modes such as Big Boss, or Uprising, or Mad Games, especially tanks that use their ammo to heal their teammates. Well, now you have unlimited ammo to heal your teammates, and I can tell you that HE, for example, does the most healing for your allies. Now you're not limited to however many shells that you have in your tank when it came to your loadout, because you have unlimited HE and you have unlimited AP. It's kind of an interesting move. It will make the games a little different when it comes to the special modes, I think, because now suddenly, especially as a boss, if you're a very limited ammo tank, for example, like an ISU 152, you can use as much AP or HE as you want. So you can... That's one thing that did kind of suck when it came to Big Boss, is essentially if you were a big boss and you had limited ammo, you had to be very careful about how you used your ammo. And now you don't have to worry about that. So that's going to be some, interesting implications when it comes to that. And then while we're here, we can actually switch over to equipment. So equipment's a little bit different now. So you still have the 3 categories and the 3 tiers. So you have your reload or penetration buff, you have your accelerated aiming or your supercharged shells. Now I will say, one interesting thing is they finally will show you the shell velocity for the tank shells when you use the supercharger, which is kind of cool because before you had to either look it up online or just take their word that it was going to make the shell faster. And then you have your vertical stabilizer or your increased dispersion. Dispersion has changed, at least in the test mode. The dispersion values look very different than they did in regular Blitz. So I'm not sure if there's a new way to calculate it or if they're actually changing dispersion on all the tanks. We'll have to keep an eye out on that. Your vitality things are kind of the same thing. You have the modules or you have the defense system. You have increased armor. Armor went up to 4% and 6% for the HP. But your track or repair kit has changed. So one of the things that you may have noticed is we don't have the provisions anymore, at least right now. So the provisions used to be the gunpowder or gear oil, or provisions and rations and stuff like that, or the protective kit. Now that is a choice that you have to make in your equipment slot. You can either choose to run the protective kit, or you can, they call it a power drink, but you can run basically improved rations and increase your tank's capabilities there as well. That's going to be an interesting choice because, especially for thinner skinned tanks, obviously the protective kit is going to be more important than having better, 2%, 3% better on everything. And then your specialization, you have the same thing. You have better optics or camo net. You have your better engine, turbocharged engine, or the combat control unit. Now this is interesting too because I used to be a staunch believer in just using the engine because it basically just gave you better mobility, slightly better turn, and your tank was quicker. But if we look at the combat control unit, there's a couple things that they changed here that make it a little bit more tempting to use. So not only does the combat control unit increase like turret and hull rotation, but it increases firing rate, aiming speed, view range, DPM, dispersion, and terrain crossing capability. So suddenly the combat control unit looks like a much better option, because not only does it increase the sort of the turn rate that it used to, which also the engine would do, but it gives you, it's essentially kind of like a small ventilation kit. And at this point, I feel like this is a much better option to use than just making your tank go faster. And then our final one is either the consumable cooldown or running your consumables longer. That didn't change. And I guess one of the last things we can touch on before I show you a replay is the style button. The style button is basically the cosmetics section. So tanks will automatically, in collections, have their own particular paint scheme that you can get. You also have two different options. You have universal or you have individual. So you can just put one camo for every map, or you can put the summer, winter, desert. So for this particular collection, because I believe it was like Neon Rangers or something like that, they come with this neon camo. There are other camos that they have, and as you can see, there's a new currency even for camo. It's called paint. So not only is there neon lights, for example, but if we go in here, there are different camos inside of this. So it's like a camo category, skin within the camo category. So you can get this paint and essentially buy extra camos either that way or via credits. There's another way you can always do it this way, or you can buy it via gold. That's also another option as well. And there's even different camos in here within the, so it's really interesting. But I feel like this is a very complicated option, and I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know. I'm gonna reserve my judgment as we see maybe more refinements done to this. But the camo selection has become very convoluted, and it feels like it's just, there's a lot more going on to it than there used to be. And I don't know how I feel about that. So that's just another thing we're going to have to take a look at as time goes on. And finally, I'll go ahead and show you guys a replay. This was just one of the matches. It was the Chimera match with Anthony. It'll show you the current state of the random modes. Oh, I guess we can go over that right before. So there are different battle modes. There's ranked, which is going to be ratings. Interestingly enough, ranked will go down to like the old tier 5, tier 6. There's random, and then there's the training rooms where you can do here as well. Anyways, so I have played both ranked and randoms. This Chimera match was a random match, and things went really oddly for the enemy team. So yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll watch that really quick.
Roll out, soldier. The enemy has no idea what's coming. piercing strike. Hostile eliminated. Module damage confirmed. Penetration affirmative. Traction interruption. Finally! I knew they'd go down. We're rolling on damaged track. Module hit. That's what I'm talking about. Good shot. That's how you destroy a tank. Track cut. Movement's impossible. Finally, the track's repaired. Go, go, go! Enemy destroyed.
So yeah, that was our replay, just to kind of get a feel for what the game looks like visually, also during gameplay, not just in the garage. It looks nice, but I again feel like there's room for improvement. Things just, I don't know if it's the color filters that they're using, if it's just I'm not used to the Unreal Engine yet, but things feel like they move too fast, feel too twitchy. And as you saw in some of the match, in that previous match, destroyed tanks just disappeared. They didn't even stay on the battlefield. Another thing that I've noticed is crush damage doesn't exist currently. They are working on that. So gameplay is still incomplete. The music is kind of weird. Like the music just kind of kicks in and out. It's, I don't know, the engine noises when you get destroyed and you watch your teammates, the engine noises would not play for me, so the tanks are just gliding around silently, but they would fire and they would, you know, make sounds when their cannons fired. The visual effects, though, I don't know, it just feels kind of overly dingy or something. It just doesn't feel quite like the PBR tanks in the current version. I feel look a little bit nicer, but maybe again, they're going to refine it and optimize it more, so I'm not going to hold that against them. I will say, though, that some of the effects are pretty cool. So, for example, like when you fire your main gun, the smoke comes out of the barrel instead of it just, you know, boom, which is kind of a more realistic thing. That's what happens in real life, too. So it's kind of cool that they've added some neat little touches like that. But I just do feel like right now the tanks are a little bit too twitchy. The gameplay camera feels a little bit twitchy. I had some stutters in some of my matches, especially in Alpenstadt. It was very stuttery, so I'm sure there's more optimization that needs to be done. So I'm hoping that that will improve with time. So that is my overall first impressions when it comes to the World of Tanks Blitz Reforged Ultra Test, and just kind of a breakdown of how things are going right now. I am still very on the fence. There are some things I do like, but there are some things that definitely need work. Our visuals when it comes to like customization will probably not be finished until we get towards the end of testing, but like these weird twitchy things, just the overall feel on the battlefield and the sort of griminess, I think needs to be refined. And there's some like economical things that just seem really convoluted. The camo or style has become very too convoluted for me. The sets right now still seem very convoluted, so I'm hoping that they can refine those and make them easier. Yeah, there's definitely refinement, and I can't make like a final judgment just based on pass one, but like overall visually it's not too bad. I think it looks nice. It definitely puts my PC with the 5700X 3D and 4070 to work. I am going to try it on my new phone, which is specifically meant for gaming. I have a Red Magic gaming phone, and I will definitely be testing Blitz on it when I get a chance. I don't think I have a horribly negative opinion of the game right now, because I know that a lot of these issues are teething problems, and this is our first release of the Ultra Test, so I'm hoping that we will see that stuff kind of get fixed and we'll get a more matured and refined game before we get to the end of it. But I do really hope to see some improvements when it comes to the style, the sets, the upgrades, and obviously, you know, missing audio and stuff like that get fixed. But yeah, that is what World of Tanks Blitz Reforged Ultra Test 1 looks like right now. I will continue playing. I will see if they make any other minor updates while the game is live, or if we're not going to see anything until Test 2. But if anything else drops or changes, I will be sure to let you guys know. And until I see you guys in the next video, take it easy. Bye-bye.